Good evening and welcome to the event brief for Cox and crew attending the Head of the Ouse Regatta on Saturday the 28th of August. Okay, this is an overview of the course. As you can see, the course starts from the northern end of Newhaven, so the tip of Denton Island, taking in the River Ouse, passing Piddinghoe, South East Bridge, Glenreach, and stopping with a finish line approximately 500 metres short of the A27 and a crew change point in Lewes at Lewes Rowing Club. That will be one race, one event, part of the event, with the return event being the same route but in reverse. You can see marked here on this map likely spectator points if people want to come and view and watch the event, good locations where they can come and watch, and also starred hazard locations which will be marshalled and start and finish line. Available if anyone would like to see it. If you just scan this QR code with your camera, that will take you to the YouTube clip of that video if you'd like to see it. The race rules and handicaps. The rules have been agreed between all the clubs participating in the event and brought together by the clubs participating, and the handicaps have been agreed. Both are available at these QR codes for Cox and crew to read and understand. The handicaps have been designed so we can do a processional race, so that essentially the slowest boat will start first, and therefore hopefully, should all the handicaps be done exactly right, all the boats would be crossing the line at the finish at near on the same time. That basically weights the race for the slower boats to get a slight time advantage in order to make it a fair and competitive, event. So one boat isn't handicapped because of the nature of the boat itself. Get into the detail then at the Newhaven end of the start. This is the Robinson Road Marina. This is the Affinity Rowing Club dock section down there. We'll essentially configure the dock to allow people to come alongside and use this as a crew change area and a marshalling point for beginning the event. And there'll be a walkway over to the riverbank, and that will prevent us having to use the main marina pontoon to access the actual area for changing crews and doing things like that. This will be a controlled access point. Crew will be issued with a wristband, and if you haven't got a wristband on, you can't come down the dock. I would ask that when you're on the dock, you remain under the sort of control and management of the person who is managing the dock, the kind of dock marshal, the pontoon marshal, if you like, because obviously with a number of crews trying to change all at the same time and do things all at the same time, it's quite important that we do that in a controlled, safe fashion. I'd also ask that no one goes on to the main pontoon section down to this end down here, as it is there's a number of liverboards on it, a number of people that live on these boats, so we don't want to disturb them if possible. There will then be elements of the event on the riverbank, refreshments available and stuff like that. Looking at that a bit more detail, widening out, you can see this then is where the pontoon section is, we've just been looking at and discussing. Race HQ, sort of the fixed point and sort of the wet weather plan will be to use the Scout Hut, Lewes Road Scout Hut down here, and this is where the social will be in the evening. And there's a route to Race HQ in the bottom left, just through the park, through Riverside Country Park, up along the riverbank to the start positions, with a start and finish line then in the turning basin for the ships that come underneath the swing bridge. So this turning basin here will be used as our marshalling, and there'll be a start and finish line here. Start and finish line will be marked with yellow flags, so there will be a yellow flag either side of the river, and as you cross that start line, your time will be recorded that you cross it at. So the umpire will be looking to control you so you cross at set times in line with your handicaps, and as you cross that start line, you'll hear the buzzer being sounded on a megaphone to let you know you've crossed and you've started, and your time will be recorded that you crossed that start line at. So if people are out a little bit as they run up to the start position, it allows us to adjust for any discrepancies from that. The finish line, as mentioned, is approximately 500 metres short of the A27 road bridge, and this is at the end of quite a nice long straight section, so it's quite a good visibility, and you'll be able to see where you are and who's chasing you and who you're catching with quite well there. And again, this will be marked with 2 yellow flags either side of the river, so you can visually see that finish line. And the timekeeper at the finish will both record the time that you cross the finish line at, and also sound the buzzer again, sound the bell to let you know that you've crossed the finish, and you can sort of take the pressure off. As you can see, Cliff Industrial Estate is where we're recommending people go to park. That then gives you only a sort of 5-minute walk along the riverbank to the start and finish line if you want to spectate the start and finish line. And also a 5-minute walk to the crew changeover point at Lewis Rowing Club. The crew changeover at Lewis Rowing Club are allowing us to use the pontoon there to conduct the crew changeovers. Again, please follow the directions of the marshals, umpires, people controlling the pontoons to ensure we can do this in a safe and orderly fashion without things getting out of hand. Unfortunately, there isn't any parking available within Lewis Rowing Club due to the small nature of the site. And it's advised not to park along South Street because this is all on-street parking for residents and we want to minimise the disruption to the residents. So we'd ask that anybody coming up for crew changes use somewhere like Cliff Industrial Estate to park. It's free parking in there, it's the weekend, so there's plenty of on-street parking available. And then it's a 5-minute walk along South Street to Lewis Rowing Club for the crew changeovers. There should be some refreshments available for the incoming crew, and also toilets and other facilities available if people need to use those at the Lewis Rowing Club end. Okay, the tidal window we have then. So the high tide in Newhaven is at 15:39. That gives us approximately just over an hour later a Lewis high tide. So we're aiming essentially to use that high tide point at 16:39 as the timing that the race hangs either side of. So we have one race going upriver with the tide and the second race coming down river with the tide. So we do have sort of, you know, a bracket, a window of timings either side of that we're aiming for to allow us to make that happen. Other points of note, we need approximately just under 4.5 metres of water to use the pontoon at the Newhaven end. So that sort of gives us roughly between 1300 and 1330 to 1750 to 1830 of the tidal window that we can operate in off that pontoon. Two other points that you can note on here on the slide are the ferry timings arriving and departing. Not of a significant issue upriver, but at the end of the day, once the event has finished, if you're returning to Newhaven Marina, you obviously need to be aware of the ferry timings as you're returning, if you're returning to the main marina. Okay, then the main hazards to be aware of: the swing bridge, the A259 swing bridge. Currently, no forecast openings of the swing bridge, so therefore no large ships likely to be up in the area of the race start. However, this can change up until a day beforehand, so we'll continue to monitor that and update if that does change. The ferry, as mentioned before, the ferry timings. So if you are returning to Newhaven Marina for any reason, please be aware of the ferry timings, and obviously any transit at the Newhaven port is to be done under the control of the Port Authority. We then have other river users. We do not have exclusive use of the river. It is free and open to all to use. So there can be other boaters out there, paddle boarders, kayakers, canoers, people swimming at Pitting Hoe, other rowing clubs out rowing or people out in boats. So we do need to be aware of that and respectful of other river users and apply the normal river, maritime code as we are interacting with them. I have liaised with Newhaven Gig Rowing Club. They have no plans to conduct rows north of the swing bridge, so they should not have rows up on the section of river we're using during the event. But I will stay in touch with them in case that plan does change. Underwater hazards. We are obviously aiming to conduct this event during the main high tide window, and as any experienced user of the River Ouse will know, the banks have a number of hazards such as fences that stick down into the water and old wooden caissons sticking up, which can be covered then by the high tide, and therefore you might think to try and take a sharp racing line and cut really fine to the edge of a corner, but you do need to still be conscious of the potential for underwater hazards in the region of that, river outfalls, etc., which could cause damage or obstruction to the boat if you were to hit it. So please be aware of that as you are rowing upriver. The tide and the current. I apologise, I'm sure I am teaching many people to suck eggs, but not everybody has the same experience of the New Haven end of the river or the Lewis end of the river between the clubs taking part. So you do need to be mindful of the tidal flow and current, particularly as the river narrows in certain sections, when that strong tidal flow will be even more pronounced. And that is noticeable in sections around Lewis as the river gets narrower and New Haven Bridge. And as touched on earlier, you have that additional tidal flow, normally about an hour after the New Haven high tide, is one would expect to see the Lewis high tide. Not mentioned there, but one to take into consideration too is the wind conditions. Because of the windy nature of the river, you will find that as you turn a bend, you may suddenly have wind being funneled towards or behind you, which obviously then may affect the handling characteristics of your craft. South East Bridge then. As you can see here from this picture, this is a picture of South East Bridge at low tide. It is actually quite a narrow channel, deep channel through the centre of the bridge, and it's the sides of the bridge, which you might have none of seen covered, isn't really that deep, and therefore the majority of the water flow, the strength of the water flow, will be through the middle, so you can be carried through there at quite some speed. This will be marked, so there will be red flags on either side of the river, both upstream and downstream of the bridge, probably about 75 metres upstream and downstream, to indicate that you have entered that hazard area. And in the race rules, there is more details on how you should respond, how these will be marshalled, and the instructions you will receive from a marshal if required as you approach these. It is vitally important you listen to and comply with the instructions from those riverside marshals to ensure that we can safely transit through hazards like this. Glenreach, so approximately 2 kilometres north of South East Bridge, you have a part of the river where there is a junction between the River Ouse itself, the main River Ouse, and a long straight section, quite narrow straight section called Glenreach. And just before that, this is quite a sharp series of bends, a right-hand turn and a left-hand turn, quite sharp, and therefore likely, and with the high river banks, and the potential that you can come around the corner quite quickly and be face to face with another craft. So again, this is a likely hazard on the river to be aware of, and that will be marked up and marshalled as just described. Okay then, the outline timing. So registration will be open from 12 o'clock. All clubs have been invited, requested to register their rowers and intent to enter in advance. Registration will be open from 12 o'clock, essentially to confirm if any changes have been made. So if no changes have been made, that's fine. But if, as happens on the day, you need to change a crew member, that's fine. There's no issue from that. We just need to let the person at registration know so they can update the list to see who is in each craft. You can see that is obviously from a safety perspective, so that we're aware who's taking part and who's on the river at all times. As mentioned, we should have sufficient water on the Kill from just going on 1300 towards 1315 to start getting boats to the initial start position at the Denton Island pontoon. So you come alongside, moor there, and then move to the Coxes brief, which will just be on the riverbank at the start position. Ben Fowler will be delivering the Coxes brief, which then should be a confirmation of a lot of the details we're discussing here, but also a brief on any changes that have happened since this, and an opportunity for you to confirm that you are happy and understand all of the details. I'd ask that all crews Coxes, so the Coxes for both men's, women's and mixed crews are present at that, so it only has to be done once. We then have a start window for the women's race start between 1400 and 1415 for the New Haven to Lewis leg of the race. This is then the opportunity for the men's crew to move up to Lewis and to prepare for the event from Lewis Rowing Club changeover. We have a crew change window of approximately 15:30, and then a men's race starts. The crew change window starts at 15:30, giving us time to change crews, and the men's race start to begin at 16:30, taking into account that it's a short, about 10-minute row from the Lewis Rowing Club to the men's race start position. As touched on in the earlier slide about the tide, then 16:39 is the high tide point, and at this point obviously we'll then be catching up with the tide as it changes, as it turns and goes downriver with the men's crew. 1750 is the rough end of the men's race window, and that gives us some time to then get the boats back into storage, covered over, and move to the Lewis Road Scout Hut for prize giving and a hopefully pleasant social event with all involved. Communications from this, and the primary in each boat will be VHF radio on channel 11 to be used in each boat. I picked channel 11 because it's obviously only one button press to get back onto channel 12 for engaging with port control and the harbour master if you need to. Additionally, I've requested mobile phone numbers so we can have an all-informed WhatsApp group so that everybody, event director, race director, hazard marshals, Coxes, will all be within that WhatsApp group so that any changes or updates that need to be given out on the day can be passed through that. And then in contingency, we'll have listed mobile phone numbers issued to each of the Coxes at the Coxes brief so they're aware of who they need to call in extremis if they can't get them on VHF or the WhatsApp group. And we will have video streaming, so we have a drone pilot on hand who will be streaming the video footage of the event to the Affinity Rowing Club Facebook page, and I'll ensure that that post is shared with the other social media platforms from the different clubs so that people who aren't at part of the event can still see what is going on. And we should have a display at the New Haven end, a screen at the New Haven end, so people at the New Haven end can watch the race from that end as it progresses. As I touched on, this will be issued to each of the Coxes, so just a list of the call signs, channels, names, and telephone numbers of everyone involved, so that communications plan on one page, and that'll be updated and issued on the day at the Coxes brief. Okay then, safety plan in a nutshell. The stripped down details of the safety plan. We've three safety boats, one to go in advance of the event to sweep the river, check for debris, warn other river users of the event about to take place. One to follow on in the rear to sweep the river from behind, and if there is an event or incident to then be behind to catch up and support with that. And one that will sort of follow the main body of the event, including the camera crew, the drone coverage. We'll have start and finish timekeepers / umpires, so somebody specifically on that part of the river to have eyes on that, who's watching and observing what is happening. The Coxes brief at 13:30, which will contain those final updates and details on the day that are required. As touched on then, hazard marshals at the most likely dangerous locations on the river to again control the event at those locations. We'll also have pontoon and dock control, so at the Coxes brief, you'll be issued with a wristband per crew member for all crews, and I'd ask that you ask the crew members to wear the wristband, and without that, they won't get access to the dock, to the pontoon. They'll have to show that to the person controlling the pontoon in order to get access. That wristband is very important because it will also entitle that crew member or Cox to a free beer or free alcoholic beverage of your choice, an item from the barbecue of your choice in the evening as a well done for taking part in entering. Marine VHF being the primary communications method because it doesn't have dead spots, unlike mobile phones. And then as part of the entry form, all Coxes have been requested that the onus is on you to comply with your existing club COVID precautions. COVID and health precautions. So if it's your club's policy that people conduct a lateral flow test before a row, you do that. If it's your club policy they complete a online health check, again they do that. So essentially we've asked that everyone completes that, and it's on the Coxes to ensure that happens. Event safety will have in place COVID secure precautions and a public address system at the New Haven end, and then signposting along the river for the basics, which way to go to get to the start, which way to go to get to the toilets. Food handling guidelines for the barbecue, and a detailed incident plan has been produced for the overarching event. I won't go through the incident plan in detail, but this will be available for the event staff, event management staff, should there be a significant incident during the event. Some other points of note: we will have local representation from Lewis and New Haven town mayors which is fantastic to have them along. We felt it was very important to have them involved because we are part of the community, this maritime community connecting our two towns, our two areas, and I thought it'd be really good to just have them as part of that wider community to see what our clubs have done, in the past 16 months during the pandemic, but also how we've sort of support each other and what we do together. And we've also invited other elements of the river and maritime community, National Coast Watch Institute, Sussex Dolphin Project, Friends of the Riverside, and to see if they're available, because it's not just about those of us on the river, it's those around the river and the coastline who support us and we plug into and are part of that community that we're part of. Refreshments will be available both at the Lewis end for the crew changes, and we will have Wonder Coffee available at the New Haven end, providing tea, coffee, cakes, gluten-free and vegan, and hopefully some Pims and lemonade too. Martin Cynic has kindly agreed to be our photographer on the day, capturing the event. And as I touched on a minute ago, there will be a screen to view the event at the New Haven end. And it will be streamed live to Facebook, so any budding social media users out there can watch it and try and see what's going on as the event progresses. That is it from me. That's just a very brief run through of the key points I think people need to know pre the event. This will then have a confirmatory follow-up Coxes brief later on before the event starts. And if you have any questions, please just comment below to raise your questions, and I will try and respond and get back to anybody with any initial questions. Thank you, everyone, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Saturday for a successful Head of the Ouse regatta.